everyone. Welcome back to Conversations with Nicole and part two of my conversation with Tim Guin, Executive Vice President and Chief Commercial Officer for USA Truc. In part one, we talked about USA Truc and the trucking industry. In part two, you will hear Tim's personal story. It's one of perseverance and success. Take a listen. This is where, for me, it really does start to be matters of the heart, because you've shared some of your personal story with me before. It is one of faith and perseverance. It is one that does relate to the trucking industry as well, with your stepfather, who you call your dad, down the road. And it's inspiring. You're currently working on your memoirs, and the title will be The Will and the Way.
Been times in my life, just like in everybody else's life, that you think that you've been wronged, either by God or people or society. You become a victim, and we're all victimized at some point in our lives, but you just can't settle in and be a victim. You can decide whether you're a victim or not. If you've been victimized, you can learn how to overcome that. You can go to God with that in prayer, and you can pray for people, and you can work your way through it. And what I realize is it makes you stronger. So this was, I'm going to say 20 something years ago. I'd been going to a men's Bible study on Wednesdays, and I was out on a business trip, and I started thinking about my life. And it was a 3-hour drive from Hartsville, South Carolina to Greenville from Sunoco. I had a meeting there one day. And my mom had always felt guilty about our childhood and the things that had happened, and the things where she may have failed, or she felt like she failed as a parent. But I can tell you one thing: my mother always got up and went to work every day, and sometimes 2 jobs. And I thought, gosh, man, she's probably, regretful, because I hear it in her voice. And I said, Mom, I just want you to know one thing. I said, I wouldn't trade my life with anybody else's. And we both got very emotional on the phone. But you look at stories like Dabo Sweeney. I love his story. It's very similar to mine, maybe not as drastic as my situation, but very, very similar. Alcoholism, out of a home, losing a marriage, losing a home, and having to fight tooth and nail for everything. And it's just made him stronger as a leader and a person. It's made me stronger as a leader and a person, and knowing that you're not guaranteed anything. God didn't put us here to make us happy. He put us here to endure. So the will and the way was my grandmother. She used to say that I would go to her house and spend a lot of my young adult life with her. And she would always say, hey, where there's a will, there's a way. And she'd pray over me, and we listened to Elvis gospel music on vinyl. And I never forgot that. And if I was going to do anything, I had to have a higher power and believe in something bigger than myself. And so that's the will to do that, and the desire to do that, and the way. And these memoirs are going to be for my family. I don't have any desire to put it out. I'll give it to anybody who wants to read it, but I'm going to finish it when I retire, and I'm a long way from that. But just the story of overcoming and persevering, no matter what the circumstances are, because if you have the will and the way, and you believe in something bigger than yourself, things are going to work out.
I'll share how it all started for you, Tim. You started in a family, and there was crisis. Your father left. Give us that background.
Yeah, so I like I said earlier, I don't remember my father early years, and so I'm going to refer to him as my father, and I'm going to talk about my dad as my stepdad, who I look at as an angel from heaven. And
you were one of 8 children too.
Yeah, there's 8 of us, and at the time that I can forward back, because I can remember vividly, 4 or 5 years old, being in that time frame, because there's traumatic events that happen. Here's my mother working 2 jobs, my grandparents taking care of half the kids, and we were just happy. We didn't know any different as children. I know my mother had angst and was struggling. And then my brother, Dan, typical situation in the projects, started doing drugs when he was 12 years old. And my brother was never the same.
Yeah.
So he doesn't remember what happened.
So you had this situation growing up that was unstable in a lot of ways, and you lost your home at some point. You talk about getting off the bus, seeing your belongings out in your front yard when you were around 10. And you said then, I will never let this happen to me. What I want, and you had siblings who went off to the Connie Maxwell Children's Home.
That was a blessing.
You say that was a blessing, right? It saved them.
Save them.
And then once your mother, your dad disappears, your mother marries your stepdad, which you say is your true dad because of how he saved your family. All of these things happened, and you could have become so bitter, Tim. You could have become that person that said, I'm bitter. All these reasons will be why I can't be successful. But you said, no, I won't let this happen to me. And you have had God right here to sustain you and make you the person that you are today. Am I right?
Absolutely. I go back to the Elvis on vinyl, the gospel music, my grandmother, the will and the way, and the prayer. And I think about friends. I think about the friends in my life and the mentors. Billy Richardson, was my French teacher in high school, who really taught me a lot about accountability. And Miss Atkinson, my counselor, she got me scholarships to go to school. And time between what I described with my brother and my sisters coming back to live with us when my dad finally got the second home for us that we all settled into. That time was probably the most difficult time of my life. So, my sisters, they didn't see a lot of that, and I'm grateful for Connie Maxwell. And I was telling one of my sisters the other day, I've never talked about it, but there was times that there was pretty desperate times for me and my mother, but they were kind of shielded from that, and they came back with faith from Connie Maxwell. And Connie Maxwell, they said one of the requirements when they come home is to go to church. And so the next thing you know, we're in church, and me and my mom get baptized when I'm 11 years old. I get baptized with my mother, and her life starts to change. And then so I got accountability in school. I got mentors. I got people looking after me, praying over me. I'm working, from the time that I could work. I always had a job. I played a lot of sports. I had coaching mentors there. And then I met my sweet wife when I was 16, and she changed it. She converted me from a Baptist to a Methodist. And so, but that was the first time that, I was always a believer, but God started speaking to me. And I started my Christian walk, at 16, 17, 18, although I was nowhere near where I needed to be. And then I got out into the business world and started in sales. And as I matured, I knew I was letting down Christ. And, I knew at that point, it wasn't about the world. It was about, my everlasting eternity. Yeah. And so I started then. I already had great friends. I grew up with. We call this group of 5 guys the Jackson 5 because we all love Motown, and that was the nickname that we have for each other. And then I met Watts, your husband, many, many, many years ago. Gosh, 30 years ago, 34 years ago, maybe longer. And he's been a good friend, and we're accountable to each other. The people we surround ourselves with will either raise or lower our standards. It says they either help us to become the best version of ourselves or encourage us to become lesser versions of ourselves. We become like our friends. Right. No man becomes great on his own. No woman becomes great on her own. The people around them help them to be great. We all need people in our lives who raise our standards, remind us of our essential purpose, and challenge us to become the best version of ourselves, which is what I was talking about earlier. I don't want to be Dabo Sweeney. I talked about him. I'm similar to him. My situation is similar, but I want to be the best Tim Guin that I can be.
You had your situation with your biological father who disappeared out of your life. Years later, he did come back into your life.
He got out of prison. He came back to Greenville. He started causing problems with us and our family and my new dad. He got arrested again, and it was in the newspaper. And, you know, we were all embarrassed about it. And he put our address in on the arrest record where we lived, and it caused lots of problems. And I had a teacher at school that read the whole article the next morning to everybody in the homeroom. And, you know, it was really, really an embarrassing situation. I became bitter. Caused a lot of fights when I was a kid during that time in middle school. He ends up in the streets, sleeping under a bridge. And so one night he calls, of all people, his mother-in-law. Now think about that. So my grandmother, probably the most loving, kind, forgiving person you could ever imagine, she just took the call and she went to help.
Wow.
And the stories in God Wears His Own Watch, but the long story accountability piece is that he goes to Miracle Hill, which was a rescue mission on Washington Street, and it's still there today, expanded, obviously. Proud to be associated with a great ministry, but that ministry has touched our family. It still touches me every day. But when he knocked on the door, he had been there before, they turned him away. And the reason they had a policy that if you were intoxicated, you could not enter the building. And they told him, if you would go sober up, you can come back tomorrow and we'll feed you and we'll put you in a room. But once he went in, he never came out. He came back the next day. There's stories of my dad. If you know an alcoholic, you'll appreciate what I'm going to tell you, that this was God. My dad never went through a detox program. He detoxed himself. There were people there that would say that he would lay on the concrete floor in his bunk room and scream, and they felt like it was the demons leaving his body. By the time he got out of that situation, started working for Miracle Hill, I was in high school. Through the encouragement of a lot of people and prayer by my grandmother, I did reconnect with him, and I didn't believe him. But he said, I want to help you. And he started giving me money, spending money to go to college. And I thought, okay, I can just go have this lunch with this fellow. And even though I don't care for him and how he ruined our family, I'm going to take his money. But the more and more I got to know him, the more and more luncheons I had, I actually thought he was still drinking. I thought, man, he's lying. He's just in here to tear our family apart. But he wasn't. I never heard him cuss, and he never drank again. Now, he's passed away, but he lived his last 20 years serving Miracle Hill and God, and helped start an inner city church, and got a Father of the Year award later on in that church. And his story inspired the rest of my family, including my stepfather, to get a little closer in his faith and his spiritual life. So it's all going to be in the memoirs, but that's how God stepped in with prayer with my grandmother in my situation. And my stepdad learned from my father, and my father proved us all. I was doubting Thomas, but he proved us all wrong.
Well, for
Proved
you,
me especially.
the power of forgiveness and healing for you. You had to let God come into your life and humble you probably even more so that you could forgive your dad, because in the end, he was an example to others to show what God could do in his life, and y'all were able to reconnect. That's the power of God's love and forgiveness.
Absolutely. And the wonderful thing about Miracle Hill is I see it happen all the time now. Once I let go of the bitterness and the hatred in my life, and into my early 20s, it changed me as a person. I grew again. As you can see, all these stages in my life, as I grew from every one of those situations. And I tell people all the time that, man, my dad didn't finish so. I mean, he didn't start so strong, but he sure finished strong. And I just hope that Tim Guin can finish strong. I don't.
No doubt you will, Tim. You are truly an inspiration. And for those that are watching right now, Miracle Hill Ministries is in the upstate of South Carolina, and I'll have a link to their website so that people can learn more about that. We could probably just keep
And
talking.
and Nikki, add Connie Maxwell to that, because I'm
Yes.
telling you right now, my sisters go back for the reunions, and I don't know where they would be without Connie Maxwell. And
We probably need to wrap up, but is there anything that you want to say as we close? And I do want to thank you for your time, Tim, to talk about USA Truck and what's happening with that organization, and also what's happened in your personal life, that you have shown that no matter what we are faced with, we can overcome, we can be better, we can be a bright light when it seems like it's a very dark world. And we do that with the help of the Lord, and we can hopefully inspire others and show them that there is a way. Don't ever give up.
well, you said a lot there, and I don't know that I could add a whole lot to it, but I can tell you this, that you know, I think everybody needs to understand that everybody's situation that they may be in or have been in is personal, and it's very difficult and emotional. You could tell today. Before, I couldn't talk about it. I'm just going to tell you, there was so much pain and so much bitterness that I couldn't share that story, and embarrassment. Think about that. I remember being in a food stamp line and being in the grocery store with my mother and collecting welfare, and being on free lunch at school and being embarrassed about that. And when you asked me that earlier, what did I, you could have easily been bitter. I just chose to not be in it. I don't want that. I don't want a handout. And I don't know why I felt that way, but I was just sick and tired, I think, of the situation that we were in. And I wanted to step up and lead, the people around me, my family. And, for me, I just want everybody to know, hey, everybody has some pain. There's always going to be a struggle. Yeah. And you need something bigger than yourself to lean on and get you through it. When you lose someone, something like that you got God and you got your friends to lean on, and know that it's a journey. And God's got it, and He's got a bigger plan than we do, and we just don't know it and understand it, right?
Keep looking up, right?
Absolutely. So go be the best version of yourself.
That's right. I'll be the best Nikki, you be the best Tim, right?
That's right.
Tim, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was an honor. It really was. I'm grateful that you had me on. Thank you.
My heart is full. Folks, that will do it for this edition of Conversations with Nicole. Until I see you again, I hope you have a great day.